Well, hello there, listeners. We're excited to be back on the Covey Wellness Centre podcast with season 2. And so we're going to start off this conversation today with a very dear friend of mine who also happens to be the interior designer for Covey Wellness Centre. And we have an exciting conversation. We're going to talk about how the spaces that we're in affect our mental health and how it matters what's happening in the spaces and the environments that you're in and around you in terms of the interior design component of that. And so Sonya Hayes is here. She is an interior design consultant. She has her own company called Hayes Designs. And she's going to tell us a little bit about herself to get us started off. And then we're going to jump into our topic at hand. So Sonya, why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, a little bit about your bio so people can get a sense of who you are.
Well, thanks for having me. This is kind of exciting because I think this is just bringing my whole design life to fruition, and this is proof in the pudding. So I've been designing homes since high school, literally. And so we're 30 years of experience here. But as a full-time art teacher for the last 25 years doing design on the side, I decided to take a leap of faith and jump in full on, no safety net, to start my own firm. And I incorporated last December. I'm still in the process of working out my marketing and my website and all that. So it will be up soon. I just have to work out a bunch of kinks and full on. So that's a little bit about how I got into this. And I just love creating beautiful spaces. I love making people feel good in their spaces. And so Wellness Center just made sense. It was a natural fit for me.
Yes. So a little bit of background for Sonya and I, for those of you who are listening and don't know, some of you will already know this, but some of you won't know that Sonya and I actually taught together. So that's our initial connection. So back before our leaps of faith into our second careers, we were teachers together and connected as friends. And we go back as far as like Sonya doing a color consult on my house when we did a big renovation in my home, in terms of her involvement in like design projects that I've had. And she is 100% my go-to person for all questions related to house and home and design and colors. And she's fabulous at what she does. I've seen the projects. You can follow her on her Instagram account, and we'll link that in the show notes here so that you can make sure you're following along with the project she does. She also does all kinds of art and does furniture refinishing and some really, really cool stuff. So super creative person here with us and a good friend of mine. And so initially, Sonya started with us in looking at the space where we started on Queen Street. So for those of you who don't know the background of Covey Wellness Centre, we started with a shop front and a singular office for therapy on Queen Street here in Elmville. And then I got the lease for that I signed it in January of 2020 and took possession in February of 2020. So everybody knows what hit the fan in 2020 and how that changed everything. So in that space, we were really looking at creating, it was an older building. It had a lot of charm, but really looking at creating like, I don't know, like an old fashioned feeling bookshop feel, and which we accomplished beautifully. But today we're going to focus on this bigger project, which was a much more involved project where we were also building from a branding model that we had done with all of our logos and branding material and trying to integrate that into a physical space. And so that's kind of where we started. And it was a huge expansion because we had one office over there and we have 7 offices here and a group room and a space for the bookshop. So it was overwhelming to me to think about how are we going to translate what we've created in sort of a micro version on Queen Street to here. And incorporate the new branding and all of that. So we're going to just start off talking about that project because that's the project that Sonya and I worked on. And we were just saying before we started recording that one of the most common things that we get in the space, other than how good it smells, that's maybe the number one comment is how good it smells in here. But the other thing is just that people feel at peace. They feel calm instantly when they're in the space. Like there's just an aura, if you will, in the space that feels a certain way to them. And that's an interesting comment to get. So what we want to do is unpack why that is. So how we take a vision for having people come and feel safe, comfortable, welcomed, and incorporate all of this and turn it into what we actually have here at the center. So Sonya, I'm going to let you take it away and just talk about how it was that you go about designing a space to accomplish that kind of a vision and how we collaborated on that.
Okay. Well, I just want to start a little bit with the Queen Street store because
Sure.
that's so exciting to me that you were going to start this venture and that, you know, you're a bookworm, you love your books, you love and that old school, that old, you know, cozy coffee shop, bookshop, that feeling, that's what we wanted to create there, but we still wanted it to be light and airy. It wasn't a very big space. So, you know,
Yeah.
kind of bringing those two ideas and coming up with, and, you know, luckily your dad is a really talented carpenter and was
Yes.
able to give me absolutely everything I wanted in the space for you. So that from that moving, it was sad to see that store go because it was so beautiful. It had so much charm,
Yeah.
but I wanted your new space to have that and more, but a little
Mhm.
bit differently. Obviously, it was quite a clinical space when you took it over. It was, well, it was a
Yes.
disaster. Let's face it. That whole space was just, it hadn't been used
Yes.
almost a decade. It was dirty. It was old. It was dark. It had low
Yeah.
ceilings. It had
Dingy.
carpet. It was, yeah, it was really, really dank. So
Yes.
you know, going into a space like that, I remember the first time you took me through, and I think I felt how overwhelmed you were.
Yeah.
And for me,
Totally.
all it is ding ding ding,
Yeah.
idea, right?
Right.
Like I walk into a space and I don't see that clutter, I don't
Yeah.
see the garbage, I don't see the grossness, I don't see it, I just see the space and the possibility of what
Yes.
space can be. And so for me, being so close to you and being such, you know, we have such a long friendship and such a good friendship, I understood you
Mm-hmm.
versus, but I also know as a potential client or somebody who wanders into that space how I would want to feel. And my whole focus in design and in spaces is that I want people to walk into a space and feel like a hug. I
Okay.
want
Yeah.
people to feel like, oh my gosh, this is just like I just got a hug from my grandma. Like this,
Yes.
that kind of feeling. And so I know, like when I walk into my own house, that's how I feel because I
Yes.
made that. And so I wanted you, all your patrons, all your clients, everybody who walks into that space to literally feel comfort the minute they walk in the door.
Right.
So stating that it's different than spa like. It is spa like. It does have the, you know, light tones and the watery feel and the nice rich woods and things like that, but it's more than that. It's
Mm-hmm.
more enveloping of how a person feels. You know, like people are coming in with all kinds of emotions.
Mm-hmm.
How can we just make that dominant feeling of walking in be that instant
Yeah.
so they can do,
Decompression. Like,
yeah,
yeah, I can relax here kind of feeling.
yeah, and I'm comfortable. I don't feel like, oh, this is sterile, or you know, you don't want that clinical feeling when
And
you're
that,
walking in space. It's all about emotion.
yeah, because that was one of my big things is I don't want Covey Wellness Center to feel like a doctor's office. And it was a doctor's
It
office,
was a
right?
doc.
So to go from, you know, the way it was laid out, and if I should give a shout out here to Christina, who is our landlord and the dentist in the practice in front. We share the building together. And she was just as excited about this project as we were, and was just like amazing in terms of wanting to see this space reach its full potential as well. But I remember thinking, like, I don't want fluorescent lighting. Like, I don't want to feel, there were two feelings that I know that are really bad. One is that clinical sterile space. And I'm like, that is not conducive to therapeutic work. People
No,
feel like they're being enveloped, hugged, welcomed, relaxed, like that this space invites them into a calmer way of being in the world. And I didn't want it to feel like the change room at Winners. You know what I mean? Like that feeling of like, all these colors like make my skin look weird, and it's like it's dingy, and there's, you know, it's stark, and I just wanted it to feel like you can come into this space and be welcomed. And when you're sitting in the office, which you see my office here behind me, but you're sitting in the office and it feels like you're just in somebody's den, you
yeah,
know, having a cup of tea, having a conversation. and just bringing all that anxiety and concern that people bring in with all of the things that they are carrying to a different level so that they can do the work that they want to do to work on their healing and not feel like the space itself, like it's that white jacket syndrome feeling, right? Like when you go in and you feel concerned and you feel compressed in those spaces and you feel like, you know, you don't know how to talk to other people, and it's that awkward. I just want to take all of that awkwardness out. And so it was important to me to catch that vision, which is what, you know, you were looking at. But it really was a transformation. We aren't going to be able to give you, someday we're going to do like a session or whatever, an episode in Sonya's YouTube channel on the transformation, because you wouldn't believe where we started to where we are. But it was very much like an untouched, unused, everything old and kind of that dingy, creamy beige that almost looks dirty. Starting point. The bones were good, you know, like we had some good structure. The rooms were for the most part like not needing a lot of, like, we were able to keep the layout fairly reasonably with a few minor adjustments. But it just was like sad. And if you came into that space, if we just moved in kind of as is and just cleaned it up, like you would not have the feeling that we have now. So when you think about that, like, where do you go with those thoughts? So you see the potential, Son. You think, okay, I know this vision that Sarah has. I know how she wants people to feel in here. I know how her branding has been designed for that same feeling. A lot of natural elements are important to me. I'm a huge naturalist. Everybody who knows me knows I love being out in nature. You can see from the picture behind me that there's like natural elements, but I wanted to draw those colors and calm from that in my branding. So how do you go from those ideas to like what we decided?
So there were a few things. Well, specifically for your space, I was designing that one specifically for you, not for anybody else. The other ones were more general use because I wasn't sure who was going to be in which room and what like the function exactly was going to be for that room. We thought we were going to have an RMT room, and I believe you've got that now.
We do, yes.
Yeah, congratulations. That's wonderful.
Yeah, it's so exciting. Our team is expanding. It's awesome.
Yeah. So we had one room that made sense to be that, like really working out which space was going to be used for what purpose. And then secondly, once that was done, then I floor plan a little. And all I think about, if I'm pouring out my heart and soul, whatever's going on in my world, I want to be comfortable. I don't want to be sitting on a hard clinical chair either.
Yeah.
So, but I didn't want all the furniture to be the same. So I wanted each room to have a personality and a different feeling, but still all that same undertone of calm and beauty. And then comfort, right? And soft furnishings help. Like, sometimes having a throw blanket is security, or, little things like that, little accessories. And staging and styling a little bit, having your candles, having your essential oils going, and your diffusers, places for that. Of course, tissues, because we know we're an emotional bunch, places and set our coffee cup down, and then how do we make that function so it's easy to move around, easy to walk in and know where I'm going to sit versus where you're going to sit. The counselor versus the client, and instantly know that this is okay. This is for me. I like this. This is for me. And I feel good in here. And so little things like building, I think everything's built on layers. So starting with a color palette that was complementary to your branding. Yeah. Although I went more bold in your room. Yeah. Because
so you guys can see here in the room that it's a very, very dark green that almost in some lights looks black, but it's a fabulous, fabulous color. But this is the boldest room. So if we were to take you through the rest of the center, a lot of the colors in the photo or the picture in here are what are reflected through the rest of the center. And so this was kind of a distinct room as the clinical director that kind of represented my personality specifically, because I'm the only one who uses this office. The other offices are shared offices. And that was a good advice from you.
Yeah.
Like, Sarah, you need to make this distinct, because I was like, whoa, this is bold, but like, I love it. I love that we went bold in here.
I'm glad I was able to surprise you a little bit with that one too, because I did not want you to see what I was doing until it was done, and you obliged fairly well. I know. Hard, but
and it's funny how it fits. Like, it still fits, and that's the thing that I think some people don't appreciate, how how much thoughtfulness goes into, it's not just slapping a color up, but like looking at, okay,
Right.
if we are going bold, but how do we keep in this family of colors that still, it's a unified space, but each little office is unique.
That's
So
right. And
how do you do that, right?
so part of bringing all that together, Sarah, honestly, is the main space. And of course, we know the hot trend for the last 5+ years have been white, 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 white. And I still wanted that feeling because that's what we had at the other space as well, with all the pops of color with the books and the products and the making
Yeah.
everything that you have in the store, in the shop, shine and really
Yes.
stand. But that also helped to bind all the other spaces. So as we go down the hallways, we're still in that, and it's a warm white. It's not a sterile white. It's
Yeah.
warm. So,
Yes.
bringing the hallways and then the pop of color in each room off the hallways, that still worked with your branding. So literally, I like to lay colors together so I can see, oh, this. Oh yeah, okay. Well, if I put this in this room and put this one down here, it just has a nice flow to it. It's something I think that comes really naturally to me.
Mm-hmm.
For colors. I don't know that that's the case for everybody, but
Oh,
I
I'm
do know
sure it's not. I'm
with
sure
me,
it's
it's,
not, because
yeah,
how many people buy paint color and they think this is going to be wonderful, and they put it up on their wall and they're like,
yeah.
what was I thinking? Like, this
What
is
was it?
terrible. And so it's a real talent to be able to figure that out and tie it all together. But
Mm-hmm,
maybe it's a good point to talk a little bit about color, like, because I
mm-hmm,
think that's a big part of, like, the spaciousness of that warm white. It's gentle, but it feels very opening to me, and very yeah, just spacious. And as opposed to something that feels like maybe more enclosed and cozy, like even my office, in a way, it feels more of that coziness because of the darker color. But how does color affect us in terms of mood? Like, I think that's an important thing to talk
yeah.
a little bit about.
Yeah. So psychology of color, obviously we know like red is stimulating, and it can trigger different emotions that are really high intensity. So
Right.
obviously we don't want red in the space. But I always refer to like nature. So water, sky, grass, but like muted tones of all that. Obviously, the sky and water are always muted tones, but
Yeah.
the greens that you see in nature, if you really look, you're not just seeing green, you're seeing a million shades of green. So
Yes.
really capitalizing on that watery feeling. We know how we feel when we're in nature, and if there's
Yeah.
people out there that live in a concrete jungle, never get to nature, you are missing out. Get yourself grounded,
Yes.
get out there. You will feel it when you step out in nature and you just take that deep breath in every day. I walk my dog 3 times a day, kind of thing. And
Yeah.
it's the thing I appreciate when I'm going out is the beauty that surrounds me in the beautiful established neighborhoods that I live in that have big trees and, a lot of
Mm-hmm.
that green space that I really appreciate. And so in your space, particularly in a wellness space of any kind, that's what you want. You want that instant feeling of calm, and you
Yeah.
only get that through nature, through the
Right.
calm, not through the storms and but
Yeah.
even the gorgeous, dark, moody blue gray in the sky from a storm coming in is,
Yeah.
and somehow that's calming.
Yeah,
So
yesterday there was a huge rainbow in the midst of one of those gray, broody skies, and it does instantly draw you in, and
yes.
the contrast of the color. So it's all about how you're bringing
Mhm.
those external elements in, and we have lots of plants in the space and lots of natural elements in the space because we see that connection, and you can't reproduce it fully,
No,
but there's
but
this connection with those colors being associated with that calm of being in nature. We're actually going to do a podcast in this series with someone talking about like the connection to nature and homesteading and forest bathing and stuff. So that'll be
yes,
coming if that's something of interest to you. But it was definitely a priority. Like, we wanted to have the space
yeah,
feel that calm that you have when you're sitting by the water. And some of the images we have in the space are very naturally inspired as well,
that's right.
like a beachscape or a
Yeah,
forest, right?
yeah, and that I think that adding that element as well gives your patrons a visual. They
Mm-hmm.
connect not just from the color but from the images as well, where they go, Oh, that is so calming. And they can put themselves there in that
Yeah.
moment. Even
Yeah.
it like every space is different, but I don't know. You can kind of see behind me here, my ceiling's blue,
Yes.
where
Sky.
my walls are white. Yeah, it's called a breath of fresh air, ironically.
Okay,
Uh,
there you go.
yeah. So that sort of I like to incorporate that in every space. I think everybody needs that in every space, but whether it's a a wellness center or a spa or your home. And I think that
Yeah.
translates both ways. So it's
Yeah.
not to create that spa feel at the spa, but to create, that feeling of that comfort and relaxation when you walk in your door, in your own front door.
Yeah.
Boom, color, you're instantly, it's a change of vibe.
Yeah. And I do think that's important too, because I did start my individual private practice in my home office. So I
Mm.
was initially inviting my clients into my home, and that's a very cozy, intimate space. And it has a different feel. So that was a concern of mine when we moved even to the Queen Street space. Are people going to feel weird that they're not just coming into the home office? Right.
Right.
And so that feeling of home, that feeling of comfort, that feeling of, we serve tea here. Everybody who knows me knows I'm a tea, freak, addict, whatever you want to call it. And so, people get a warm cup of tea and they sit in a cozy chair, and there's comfy pillows and a throw blanket if you want. And you can just kind of settle in for your session in a way that has that same welcome. And so again, that was a concern of mine, switching from a home office, and that intimacy and feeling of comfort that comes from that invitation to
Mm-hmm.
wanting to have that, be able to recreate that here. And again, I do think people feel very much at home here, and that's an important thing. That's not every space, but that's what we're trying to convey emotionally here. And so
Mm-hmm.
we've set the design to accomplish that.
Yes. And
Yeah.
it really is that, again, just like your comfort is at your home, if you're going somewhere for something so emotionally,
Vulnerable.
thrilling, vulnerable, whatever it is, and you don't have that comfort, how can you literally just let go and let
Yeah.
it out yourself? So
Yeah.
I feel like it's really an important thing. And again, I think that translates back to your home as well. And I know, if you're walking into your house and it's disorganized and it's cluttered and it's, things don't have a space. And that's the biggest problem. That's the number one problem, is people haven't allotted space for stuff. And so,
Right.
yeah,
So
that
that's
is
so disruptive to your feeling in your space. Right. Okay. Talk
right.
about that some more. Yeah.
So even coming into the wellness center, there's a place to hang your coat, there's a place to take off your shoes, and there's a place to, and in some homes, I'm currently own a century house, and in the house, there's no front hall closet. So I had to create it. You can see this dark door right here behind me.
Yeah.
I just extended the staircase a little bit underneath, and I created a closet there because I know that if you're, coming, you're dropping stuff at the front door, right? If you don't have a place for things and you don't have a system, and that doesn't mean that you have to have the best or the biggest or the custom everything. That's not what that means. That literally means you need to understand how you function when you walk into a space. What are the things you have in hand? What are the things you're going to drop? What are the things you're going to need to access easily and quickly? And
Yeah.
then how do you do that and still make it look good? Because that
Right.
visual part, Sarah, is I think I can put it in this kind of context where when you're walking through an area, it could be a home, it could be out on a street, it can be where it's cluttered and it's dirty, and you instantly feel that. You instantly go, ew, right?
Yeah.
Ew. But you
Yeah.
walk into a beautiful space, park, a neighborhood that's really well taken care of, a house that you walk in that you can almost smell the cleanliness, you
Yeah.
instantly calm down. But if it's all associated with clutter and mess, and our instant reaction is ew, and even though we may not say it, and we might
Yes.
not even consciously think it,
Yep.
our subconscious takes over. And so if you can build a space that when you walk in, your subconscious is instantly at ease. That is my
Yes.
goal. I think everybody should love where they live, but
Yes.
everybody should love where they have to go. It's a necessary, service that you're providing, and they should love going there and not feel
Yeah.
like, oh, but something
Yeah.
that's and whether it's the smell or the color or the general setup, the flow, whatever that is in your space, you should love where you live. Because if
Yes.
you don't, that is creating tension. And that doesn't mean you have to spend a ton of money. It just means that you need to get
Like,
yourself thinking, how do I function?
well,
And
it's
so,
intentionality. It's like
mhm,
I'm not just arriving in a space without thinking about how I need to use it or how I want it to feel. I'm actually being thoughtful about
yeah,
my space. And I think of the
yeah,
word sanctuary, which I think applies here, that we
yes,
want it to feel like a sanctuary. And that makes me think of churches, right? And sacred spaces that are designed to welcome you in so that you can be present to yourself and to your spiritual connection, which again is similar to nature, right? Like all these themes of like, if you can't retreat to your home and find sanctuary in your home because everywhere you look is disrupting your well-being because there's clutter or there's mess or there's disorder or things aren't where you need them, and that's stressful as you can't find your keys because you don't have a spot for your keys at the door, for example. Those
mhm,
little sort of micro stressors really add up. And
yes,
we all know that feeling of going into, and this, and like I appreciate what you're saying too, it doesn't mean like a curated perfect
no,
magazine ready space. It just
correct,
means a thoughtfully designed, well functioning space that represents you and your family's needs. And sometimes I'll talk to people about, you know, how if they're young moms, for example, and they have kids at home and their spaces are just constantly used. I mean, I have 4 kids. Our house gets beat up, but I've always said, like, you need to have at least one space. So maybe you can't deal with that in your whole house, but you can say, I have this one corner of my bedroom, or I have my home office, or I have this spot that I can literally retreat to that has that sanctuary feel. You know,
mhm,
that when I sit down, I have those cozy comforts. The visual I have is not jolting to me, because we need those spaces where we can decompress, and
yeah,
our home, and obviously here at Covey Wellness Center, like, we're looking to support people healing, to support people's self-care and restoration of the things that are depleted by all the things in the world. So we want to invite people into those kinds of spaces, but sometimes it's thinking about that maybe in one space as a starting point in your house, that I can retreat to this chair in the corner of my bedroom that has the right lighting and my diffuser and a spot for my tea and a view out to the tree in my yard. And I can get that feeling, and then extending that as you're able into the other spaces in your home, right?
and I think it can be simpler than people think as well. Like I know it's a challenge to design a great space. I understand that, and I understand that a lot of people don't understand balance and things like that. But really, we're born with this ability. This is a totally innate ability. We're born with this ability to see beauty, to see beauty. We see it in
Yes.
flowers. It exists in nature. So it's called the golden mean. And it's a ratio, right? 1 to 1.618 and so on to infinity. But that basically it's rule of thirds, right? So in general, even though we don't know design and we don't know, or the general public doesn't know design, doesn't maybe know those rule of thirds, doesn't really understand that balance or whatever, we do understand it. If you take a moment and you see the perfect oak tree, you look at that and you go, gosh, that tree is beautiful. I will
Yeah.
guarantee you it has that perfect ratio in it. And you can
Right.
see that and feel it when you come into your home. If something isn't balanced, and that could
Yeah.
be, the placement of things, feng shui. And I'm not a big feng shui advocate, but I understand it because it gives a different feeling. If the flow doesn't work, if there's something
Yeah.
blocking flow, that's taking away that perfect ratio. And that is also adding tension to the internal feeling. And so,
Right.
subconscious as that might be, and it is, we don't consciously think, oh, I look around and I'm not happy about this because that doesn't balance that. That's not what
Yeah.
we think. We look around and go, oh God, I got to do something with this space.
Yes.
Oh, you
Yeah,
know,
we know. And you know it when you feel it. And so it's that body wisdom almost too. It's like, okay, how am I responding to this without even like consciously considering it? It's just, I have a feeling, I have a
yeah,
gut reaction.
That's
And
right.
I remember recently we repainted through a house. Sonia helped me with that too. And we got a new couch that we needed for our growing family in the living room. And we got the couch in, and I'm like, this is not going to work the way we thought it was going to work. And that, being in that space where the couch was there and things didn't fit and they weren't sitting properly, I was like, this is stressing me out. Like, this is our main living area where all the family comes and we settle in and we put our feet up and we read and we talk and we watch our shows. And we could not do that. And so this one Saturday afternoon, I just started moving stuff around, and I didn't know what I was doing. There was no design plan, right? It was just me thinking, this isn't working. And we got to one point, everything was in the center, and I was like distraught. Like I was in a rough shape. And the boys and Jason, of course, are moving everything around for me. They're like, Mom's gonna lose it. Like, but that disruptive feeling led itself for me to make some changes. And then we finally landed, and all of a sudden we were all like, oh, that's it. That's the configuration. Now, it was just based on how we felt in the space and how we needed to be able to feel when we were sitting and where things were. It's like, this isn't going to work if this is on top of that. And so many people have come in since we redid that. I'm like, oh, your space feels so much more open. We went to some lighter colors, like we did a Swiss coffee on the walls, which is a warm white. And, it makes a huge difference. And we all know that, but we sort of maybe underestimate the impact of that in the spaces we find ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Another thought that I was having is, I've worked with a couple of clients who are highly sensitive people. So they're very, very sensitive to sensory input, like overly sensitive. And so they'll go into like cubicle type working spaces, and they just find it really, really distressing
Yeah,
because they're acutely aware of how those senses impact them. And not all of us are as aware. We all have that, but we're not as aware. And so when a highly sensitive person is in a space, they have to take control of that space in a way. They have to change the lighting. They have to go to warmer lighting. They have to use, lamps instead of the overhead ceiling light. They have to put some visually appealing things on their spaces. They have to think about their chair and how the texture of the chair and the fabric on the chair feels. So they naturally are, sort of hyper focused on that, but it's actually an indication of what we all experience on some level in those spaces. And so
absolutely.
thinking about that sensory input, what is it that I see? What is it that I smell? What is it that I feel and touch when I'm in those spaces? That stuff really matters. And it's very grounding. Like we know that we feel grounded when we enter into acknowledging our sensory input in the moment that we're existing.
Yeah,
So, you could think about that even for your office. Like if your work is really stressful, what does your office space feel like?
exactly.
How can you make some simple changes to lighting, to the texture,
Yeah,
to what you're visually looking at, to reduce those sensory stressors, that
yeah,
sensory input, and raise up good sensory input that's
yeah,
calming,
yeah. And I think part of that too, and part of that feeling, even in a home office or an office space of any kind, is how does it function? Is it easy? Is it am I having a hard time finding all the stuff I need, or do I have a system, or do I have, and then also making that system visually nice,
Yeah,
so
it really does matter. It
it
really
does
does
matter.
matter.
Like
And
you can have plastic containers on your counter with your pens and things in it. It's going to be organized. It's going to be fine. Or you can have really cute cups that hold things that,
yeah,
make you feel, oh, isn't that adorable every time you grab a pen, right? So
yes,
it's those little things. And again, that doesn't have to cost anything. It
no,
doesn't have to, it's really just how does the space function? How do I feel in that space? But actually, like you said, be aware. and
yes.
and and we're not I mean, we walk through life like this, right? We're just kind of getting through day by day by day by
Yeah.
day in some
We're not
cases.
really present to ourselves in general in life. So
Yeah,
we're not in our space, like we're not paying attention to how our spaces are affecting how we feel.
Right, because it does affect how we feel, but
Yeah.
we're not paying attention. So we're not
Yeah.
recognizing some of those signs that maybe I'm a little short tempered about something, or maybe I'm a little bit more emotional about something. And maybe it is as simple as that. Like if I reduce the stress and tension in my visual space and make that function better,
Yeah.
then that alleviates a trigger, right? It takes things away without consciously thinking about that afterwards.
Yeah.
Now it's natural. You're going into that space. It's been designed for you to function
Yes.
for you. And I think that's important too. So even every space that I go into, I'm not designing for me. It
Yes.
always it always has a Sonya flair to it. I think you can always tell my spaces. I think identify my spaces. I think I have kind of
Yeah.
a flair that is sort of signature me. And I can't pinpoint that exactly what that is.
No, but I know
I
what
just
you mean when you say
every
that.
space I do, I know it has a me feeling to it,
Yeah.
but it's for the person. So,
Yeah.
for instance, like your hallway, I would have never personally picked dark purple for myself,
Right. At
but
my
I picked
home. Yes.
your house, right? Because
Yeah.
that's you, and that's your personality, and that that all of those colors were all your personality. So
Hmm.
I think it's really important as a designer, going into people's personal spaces, whether it's your workspaces there or home spaces, it's the same thing. I need to design for that person,
Right.
because that's when they're going to feel the most comfort. That's when they're going to feel like, wow, this really reflects me. I didn't know this was me, but I know this is me now. Like I
Yeah.
didn't know what I wanted, but I know this is me. I know this feels like me. I know this is totally my style. Even though I didn't know how to tell you, Sonya, this is my style.
Yeah.
My
And
style.
you know
So
those questions to ask to draw that out, just like in clinical work when we have a client-centered approach. We're not saying you come in and we'll run you through a program. This is
yeah,
week one. This is your first therapy session. This is what we do. And then your second therapy session, this is what we do. It's a lot of listening and gathering information and asking
yeah,
questions and really understanding what the client needs and then tailoring the treatment to that. And that's
yeah,
similar to the process of designing spaces for them, right?
yeah,
Thinking about who they are, how they want to feel, and having the questions. Like if they don't know, like I remember going to you for my color consult, I'm like, I don't know, like I do know a few things, but like I don't really know, and you were able to ask me questions and talk me through some things. I'm like, yeah, that is it, right?
yeah,
Like, and that's, I don't want to make like a perfect comparison to therapy, but it's that similar client centered. If you're listening,
yeah,
then you're responding to the needs of the client that you're working with in both capacities, and moving them,
yeah.
towards something that's more them, towards that awareness, helping them to
Exactly.
gain that awareness.
And I think in most cases, people who are looking for professional help in their space,
Yeah.
I really feel like, they really don't know how to pinpoint. They really don't know
Yeah.
how to work that down, but I do. It's a science, right? It literally is, I even like to know what color their car is, so
Right.
there's all kinds of little insight questions that I ask that might seem really odd, like what's your favorite food, right?
Right.
Because maybe you're a spicy person and you like spicy, and maybe we need to add a little spice to the personality in the space. um,
Right.
you know so it's questions that are more about like that general, who are you, and then I really do build on that. And I think my experience, my 20 plus years teaching, is really helpful in understanding personalities and what people need
Oh,
and
for sure.
for. And of course, being an art teacher specifically, getting to that, what is your aesthetic style, and really working on that with a client. It's a little easier than it is with a student, to tell you the truth, because I think I have a lot of clients that have really, really good taste. You're one of them. Good taste, really good
Hmm.
taste, but don't know how to pull that together, don't know how to get that look, don't
No.
know where to begin. And I wouldn't expect anybody to know that. Everybody shouldn't know that. I really do believe that you need professionals in certain situations. I
Yeah.
I'm not going to be doing tiling. I can do tiling, but I'm not going to be tiling. I'm not the professional at that.
Yes.
My profession is putting the design together and
Yes.
creating that space that makes you feel good and makes it feel like you, right?
Right.
So that, there's a lot in the psychology of getting to know somebody to be able to turn around and create a space that really genuinely reflects them. And I think for
Right.
me, important. I like the idea of flipping spaces, but then I really don't, because I really like adding the personality to the space, because
Right.
and for me, I don't flip my own houses, but I build them, I renovate them, and then I live in them for a while, and then I want to
Yeah.
pass to somebody
Yeah.
else love as much as I loved the space, right? And
Right.
if you live in it, you get to know, oh wait, this didn't function well, I'll change that. When you get to, recognize that a little bit, that's where, real growth and change happens in design. But I
Yeah.
think for the most part with your space, for you, because we had to make things a little bit general in some of those other offices, yours not, I could
Hmm.
definitely your personality right in there.
Yeah.
But everybody else's, I sort of had to, it's kind of like flipping a house, right? You have to make it appealing to everybody,
Right.
but
And
still get a little personality, right?
people have brought, like, so some of the people in the other shared offices, because we share them, but they're whatever office you work in, you work at the same office, so even though you're sharing it, you're not jumping around, because we
Right.
want them to feel like they can land too. And so they've brought in, some of their books and different things in, and like they've customized it, and it is in those details, right? So almost like those rooms became like like a open canvas that worked. And
Yep.
then once people kind of land in them,
Yeah.
there's not a lot of customizing per se, but little details that show like, oh, this therapist is in this room because you can see their book stack on the shelf in this way,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so those details make them feel at home in that space, which is why we wanted to have shared spaces, but like you're in the same one. So you didn't feel like you were just, as a therapist, transplanting from one space to
Yeah.
another.
And building on the foundation. So we had really good foundation for them to customize those spaces. So
Yeah.
we chose area rugs that were different for every space and that were
Yeah.
beautiful in every space, and that went with the colors that we chose on the wall in every space. So there was a little personality in there. We chose different furnishings for each space that
Yeah.
suited space specifically, because some of the spaces lended themselves to be more uh modern, and some
Yes.
lended themselves to be more traditional, and then some
Yep.
were just transitional. So having that variety of furniture, moving things around a little bit, how am I going to set this up, how's that going
Yeah.
to function? We have wing chairs in one, we have tufted backs in others, we've got, so you
Yep.
have that difference. They're all different, every room has different stuff in it, every room has different, the rolly chairs, maybe there's a couple duplicates in that for desk
Yeah.
chairs, only because they're comfortable and beautiful and
And they
transitional.
work. Yeah.
Yeah.
And some
But
spaces are multi-use. So we had to think
yeah,
about that functionally too. Like the group room space, we have a table that can be taken up or taken down
yeah,
because sometimes we need to use that differently. And then we have our yoga in the across the hall. We do one-on-one yoga coaching with Nancy, who's incredible, but she needs to have the ability to move that furniture very easily to make more space.
yeah,
So we have to have comfortable but lightweight portable
yeah,
furniture that can tuck away and open up the floor space. So again, that's different than my office, because other than me maybe doing some yoga stretches in here, we're not conducting yoga like coaching in this room.
yeah,
So we have a more sturdy, like permanent kind of chair in here.
yeah,
So yeah, so it is really in the details. Like what's emerging for me is that obviously your space matters. I mean, we both believe that when we started, but even just the more we're talking about it, I think this is an important thing to consider is how are your spaces making you feel, and how can you in minor ways, like, paint color alone is a huge way to change the feeling of a space. Getting organized in a space, which is time and not even money a lot of times, right? It's just clearing the clutter. These little things are going to have an impact on your overall well-being if you can have that sanctuary space. And then I think thinking about the sensory thing is really coming forward to me, like really thinking about how that grounds you in a space, what you're
mhm,
seeing, hearing, tasting, touching, feeling, or what am I missing? Seeing, hearing, tasting, touching, smelling. I should know
yeah,
that because the smell is
yeah.
the other thing.
So
Those
great.
things make a difference. And
Mhm.
and so are you thinking about those elements in ways that come together, right? And then also recognizing this is an overwhelming thing. So it can be, especially if you're not someone who intuitively maybe is connected to yourself in that way.
That's right.
So, asking somebody like Sonya for some support to get you started, for whatever components of the work that you need, even if it is you're building a whole new house and you need a concept for the whole house, all the way
Hmm.
down to this room, my bedroom needs an overhaul. Sonia recently did a bathroom for a good friend of mine for his mom, and it's beautiful. Like, it's just like it went from like, yeah, this is a fine bathroom, to like, wow, and that alone, like every time she goes into that bathroom, she has that feeling now because
Hmm.
there was some care shown. So there's no, I think you can make a difference in the details, right? And
Yeah, for
considering
sure.
that sensory input, and just being intentional about that and saying, this
Hmm.
does matter. This is not just a living space that I come and go from that doesn't affect me. This is my sanctuary. This is
Also,
this is my office.
that psychological sense of pride and accomplishment. So
Mm-hmm.
that, when you tackled, like, I've just listed my house, so I'm in the process of cleaning out closets, like, and I have like, me, I have a really extensive wardrobe.
Yes. And lots
And
of shoes.
yeah, I've got it narrowed down. I think I'm about 100 pairs left. So
Wow.
I know,
That's
right?
wow.
I know. And I'm down, I've got 5 closets full right now, but of clothes. But you would share wear is coming into a huge haul. Let's
Yeah,
put it
okay.
that way. Yeah. So that sense of accomplishment when you do something, when you organize something, and you take a little bit, if somebody sees that space, you're proud. And that pride can be dangerous, but it's a good feeling when it's internal, when you look around and you go, wow, this
Yeah.
looks great. It's internal pride. And then if somebody comes to your door, you're like, yeah, come on in, like you
Yeah. Like,
feel
come and
that
enjoy this space with me.
come enjoy this with me. Exactly.
Right?
Because, and like, I mean, I've lived here through the pandemic, so I have not had company. I haven't had, I haven't had any parties or get-togethers or anything, and I'm about to move. So,
Yeah.
there's like things like that where now I wish everything's sort of set up for the sale. And I'm always proud of my house. I never feel
Yeah.
bad if someone knocks on my door because I've set it up that way where I
Yeah.
have a spot for everything. So I'm never really overwhelmed with clutter, or but that sense of pride and accomplishment, that,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, I cleaned out that closet, or I cleaned out those kitchen cupboards, or I eliminated, I got rid of clutter. I think in our visual clutters our mind. And I
Hmm.
felt that way even when I was teaching, and I had a ton of marking to do. I could not do the marking until the dishes were done. Like,
Yeah.
so that clutter bogs my mind. And I think that
Yeah.
is for a lot of people. I think I'm just your typical average person. So I think if I feel
Yeah.
this, everybody feels this. And so eliminating that gives you that sense of A, accomplishment, and B, pride. And I think that's a
Yeah.
good feeling too. And when you can walk into your space, feel comfortable, be happy, be at home, feel like that warm hug, and you're proud, and you feel accomplished because you did something to contribute to
Yeah.
that. What can be better than that? What can
Yeah.
be creating a good environment to be in? What can be better than
Yeah.
that?
Well, we
So,
we live in the environments we're in, so why not make them beautiful and welcoming and cozy and
mhm.
representing those things that we know affect our sensory input, so we can land in the spaces and enjoy and it's not about perfection, of course. It's
Oh,
about, because
no.
we can't live in spaces and have them be, magazine perfect, because we sit there, we live
Oh,
there.
trust me, that is
But
literally just for photos. Nobody lives
nobody
like
lives like that.
nobody lives like that.
But
So
we
don't try
know
that
we
standard.
know that if we clear, like I heard a saying one time, it's like, clear a space, clear your headspace.
Yep.
And it's like, it does matter. And we can't perfectly quantify it, maybe, but we do know intuitively that it matters. And so, it's one thing to think about, as a form of self-care, right?
Hmm.
What are
Yeah.
our spaces like? How can I care for myself in this space? How can I provide a space that welcomes others, which is what we want to do here at Covey Wellness Center.
Yeah.
Tanya and I always joke about how, from the beginning, in the first space, we would just come in when we weren't working and sit in there because it's so nice.
I
it's just
and
like,
Allison, she said the same thing. Sometimes she goes just to be in the space.
yeah, just to be in the
Yeah.
space, right? Because it feels good to be here. And that's, to the extent that you can be intentional and have some control and agency over your spaces, wherever
Mhm.
you find yourself at work or home, do that. And
Yeah.
it might be in big or small ways, depending on how much, depending on what your workplace is like. Maybe you work in a hospital and that's really difficult, but you
Mhm.
choose really comfy socks because the sensory detail of being at home in those socks when you're doing your rounds or whatever matters,
Yeah.
right? So, or you put a couple, when people were wearing like, surgical masks and things, putting a couple of drops of lavender on their masks so that it's calming, in a healthcare setting or something. That stuff makes a difference,
Yeah.
when you're having to do that. So just really thinking about those elements and caring about that. So,
Yeah. I agree.
okay, I know we could go on longer, but we're coming to the end of our time. So I know, I think we've covered all the questions we hope to cover in some approximation, but we do have one final question that we're asking everybody in this season. And that question is, what's keeping you well in this season? So we ask this to every one of our guests. So what's keeping you well in this season?
I would definitely say my family. I live alone, and I really enjoy my time with my family. I make time for my family specifically. I know that's my love language is time. That's my
Mm-hmm.
giving. And I that makes me feel really good too, because I know I'm always rejuvenated after I've spent time with my niece and my nephews, and my sisters, and my mom, and those are important to me. So having coffee with my mom regularly, that's important.
Yeah.
Having our girl time. We watch a show, Virgin River. I'm sure a lot of
Yeah.
your viewers will have heard of it.
Yes.
So mom and I watch this, and we make sure we do it together. Like, so it's stuff like that that really makes me feel good. And like I said, I just listed my house yesterday, so
Yeah.
I'm really excited about the next adventure. I'm not sure what it's going to be yet, but I think the anticipation of awesome is
Yeah.
brewing in me. And so building my business, I'm in school. I write my exam in November, so I'll be finished that. It's a business course for designers, so that I have accredited business processes, so that my clients feel very secure about how I run my business and how I function with my business. So
Yeah.
that's really, 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 I think really helpful for me. We all have that imposter syndrome
Yeah,
when,
totally.
especially when you're starting something new like I am, and branching out on my own, not working for another company, but starting my own firm and having people do work for me. I feel like educating and getting this course under my belt and all the time that I'm spending now is really valuable. I've made really good connections with some of my colleagues and classmates, where we can, bounce ideas. I have a group that there's 5 of us that we meet regularly every week or every other week to just bounce ideas off of for business. And
Mm-hmm.
that's really helpful to have that in whatever profession you're in, just to be able to have people you can turn to and talk to.
Yes.
Design be tricky in general, because designers are a weird breed. Sometimes they really want to hold everything close to their chest, and they don't like to share. I totally disagree. I'm on the total opposite team, where I just think there's more of us, the better, more ideas, the better. So that's also giving me, making me feel really good, is that
Yeah.
I have a group of people I can confer with and I can support, and they support me. So that's how I'm keeping well. And, I get out and walk the dog 3 times a day, because I love
Yeah.
her, and she loves her little run around, and, you get to know the neighbors. So there's a lot of little things I do every day for my wellness that,
Yeah.
are take care of me. I won't say I'm perfect at this, because I'll tell you, the last couple of weeks of getting the house ready for a listing has been, a little bit
Stressful.
stressful.
Sure.
But I've managed it by using those tools.
Yeah.
My
Well,
dog,
community, right?
family, community. Yeah.
Like your family, that social support element. Like, again, I can't emphasize that enough, like being around people. And the other thing I would say that in the space, from a space standpoint, is, I've created this space also for the CWC team,
Yeah.
right? Because working together, and like you're saying, with your colleagues in the design work, and your being around life-giving people,
Yeah.
family, friends, colleagues, that does matter significantly. And so when we find ourselves in spaces with those key people, that's going to really contribute to your wellness. Isolation is not good for us. And so that's
a rough 3 years.
It's been a rough time.
Mm-hmm.
So really prioritizing that for yourself is keeping you well, that connection, that time together, the physically being around the people that you love and the people that encourage you in your career. That's so good. Yeah, that's a good word for all of us to remember, that we need our people. We need that connection, and to make that a priority.
Absolutely.
Okay. So as a way of wrapping up, tell people what's the best way to connect with you, Sonya, if they want to follow along with your work, if they want to connect with you for some design projects, where is the best way to reach you? And then we'll tell us about that. And then we'll also put that in the show notes, so people can link to it. But how can we find you?
Okay. So I'm on Instagram as Sonya Hayes, or Shay's Designs, but if you put in either name, I have 2 accounts, they'll come up. All my stuff's on both accounts. And also have a YouTube channel called Room to Rethink that I haven't been posting very much lately, but that's going to change, where more content is coming, and I'll be doing that. But I have 2 full complete home renovations on those from beginning to end, and in that as well. And my email is sonya@shaysdesigns.com. And so it's Sonya at Shays, Hayes, like play on
Hayes. Yep.
HAYES. .com. So feel free to reach out, email me if you want to know more about my services and what I offer. I'd be more than happy to email you back information about how my processes work, how we can work together, and I have something for every budget. So feel free to contact me.
I highly, highly, highly recommend it. For those of you who come into Covey Wellness Centre, I think we have Sonya's cards at the front too, so you can grab one of those. And certainly if you like the way you feel in this space, it's thanks to Sonya collaborating with me to make this vision happen. So that gives you a sense of how awesome it is, the work that she does. So excited to have this conversation. I'm already percolating on things that I want to think about in my office space. Even right now, I'm like, there's a couple of things that are kind of out of place, and I think I'm gonna take some time to find the spots for that. You know what I mean? Like,
so that's humbling.
I'm percolating, right? Like, okay, yeah, I need to think about those details again and maybe move these few things around. I think about something as simple as making your bed, right? Jason's the bed maker in our family, which is great. But it makes those things make a difference, right? So, start small and then start building the space that you want to be in, that's going to support your health and well-being. So thanks, Sonya, so much for coming. I look forward to more conversations and more projects together. And I hope lots of people find you and start to find spaces that are really representing them and supporting their own sanctuary needs, if you will. And for those of you looking for support for mental health and well-being, you want to be in this space. So drop in if you want. If the sandwich sign is out, we're open. You can pop in. You don't need an appointment to check in and see what we're all about. The bookshop is always open. And then you can always reach out to us on the website to ask about services or products or options. We do have a new reflexologist and a new RMT that have just joined our team, and lots of counselors in the psychotherapy field. So lots of things available to support your health and wellness here. So CoveyWellnessCenter.com is the best place to reach out to us. So again, thanks everybody for listening. Thanks, Sonya, for your time. And we'll sign off for now.